what do you think are if you like, the priorities this government should have, or any Kenyan government at that, should have in terms of improving the business climate, right? Just, we often have these rankings. Lots of people put a lot of value in the World Bank's rankings, but what's the reality on the ground is, rankings are nice, but what are the things that really when you look at the environment, what do you think they should be prioritized?
First, let me say first, I think, Kenya actually has a quite decent and quite comprehensive policy and legal framework for business. In fact, you have lots and lots of lawyers. What do investors hate?
Certainty.
They hate inconsistency. They hate uncertainty. For me, I think in terms of what governments can do better, including the Kenyan government can do better, is to consistently implement those policies. So that's number one. I think it's a consistency of implementation, which is absolutely critical. You can have wonderful policies and good regulatory framework. If you don't implement them, it's not going to be very helpful. Or if you implement them arbitrarily, it's going to be extremely harmful. So I think that's really number one. Second, perhaps, is really thinking about the type of policies that can help you to actually reduce the cost of doing business. The inputs we talked about, right? I talked about Kenya's advantage in renewable energy. But the cost of your energy is actually relatively high compared with other countries. So I think having policies in place that can help to reduce the cost of energy, having policies in place that can help you to reduce the cost of transport, the logistics side, and policy can help you to promote competition. Now, as an individual business, many of us, we don't like competition, we all want it to be monopolies, but as an economy, we actually wanted to have a competitive environment so that can continuously drive costs down. So I think it's that type of policies that's going to be really important. We talked about the many advantages Kenya has. But competition is not just with yourself. Competition is with other countries. Other countries are also constantly improving their business environment, constantly reducing their cost. So I think what that also means is that you need to continuously reform your systems, making sure you are always at the forefront in terms of policies so that your businesses, your investors can get the lowest cost for energy, the lowest cost for transport. At the same time, they're quality and reliable, right? And they can get skilled labor force also at relatively low cost.
Thank you. I'm not sure how we're doing for time because I have, should wrap it up? Okay, I've got the universal wrap it up sign. This has been an excellent conversation, and I have not just enjoyed learning from you, but I just wanted the top themes, the words I heard most often. Number one was resilience, really the resilience of Kenya in terms of creating an environment in which businesses and investors and capital can come to and grow and generate profits. I really like this theme about consistency of policy, not just in having great ideas, but also consistently implementing them. So one person doesn't get one deal and another person gets another deal. The level playing field is just incredibly important for investors. And third, and I think was the most important, was the Kenyan people. Everyone on this panel talked about this. It's It's key to how this country develops and grows. And, frankly, it's key to the way all African countries will grow. But it's important, while we're in Kenya, we sort of pay homage to that, because I don't think we do that enough about our respective countries. And I think that it's a really important point. But please join me in thanking this excellent panel. Thank you for your time.
I personally, I also took a few years off from the World Bank about 15, 20 years ago, worked as a senior executive in the private sector. What do investors look for in a country? Clearly, they look for political and economic stability, policy stability. They look for market size, and they look for quality inputs like labor, low cost, and they look for good infrastructure. I think the short video you've just shown has done a wonderful job in really highlighting these strengths. Mind you, Kenya is the largest economy in East Africa, with a GDP of about $125 billion in 2024, and it's likely to get to be above $130 billion in 2025. That's a very sizable market. But on top of that, Kenya is the gateway to East Africa, a market of over 300 million people. And on top of that, Kenya has multiple trade agreements with Asia, with Europe, with the North America. And that means that investors in Kenya will also have preferential entries to all of those markets. So it's not just the Kenyan market, and it's not just the East Africa market, it's not just the Africa market, it's actually the global market. I think that's, for me, as an investor, I think this is very, very important. Second, a number of you mentioned the quality of your people. It's the Kenyan people. Kenya ranks the highest on the World Bank's Human Capital Index. We have a fantastic education system. And that population has, it's not just people who can do jobs. They also have this tremendous entrepreneurial spirit. If you look at Kenya's mobile phones, payment services, M-Pesa, it's everywhere. And Kenya is a front runner in that area. I think for investors, that the advances you've had in mobile payment actually lays the foundation for significant growth in the kind of areas you're working in agriculture, in financial services, and in many other sectors. So I think these are really it's a combination of these, the depth, the breadth of the market, the quality of the people, and the entrepreneurial spirit. And I also wanted to add, I think Kenya's infrastructure has made important strides in the last decade. We have seen significant improvements in transport. The video shows that over 93% of Kenya's energy is renewable. That is a huge advantage for manufacturers who wanted to do sustainable and green manufacturing. So this is a place that has enormous potential for investment. And we, at the World Bank, we're putting our money where our mouth is. Our current portfolio, the active investment portfolio in Kenya at the moment is about $7 billion. And our private sector arm, IFC, has invested in its active portfolio of about $1.3 billion. And our guarantee agency, MIGA, is providing hundreds of millions guarantees to investors. So please, this is the place to come if you wanted to help the country to develop and if you want to make money.
Thank you.
Thank you. Delighted to be here. So Flamingo is one of the world's largest exporters of fair trade flowers and vegetables. We were founded in Kenya 42 years ago on the fervent belief that Kenyans could do anything as well as anyone on the world stage. I like to think of us as one of the original offshorers. So we took vegetables and fruit that were being grown in the UK and Europe and basically started offshoring it into Kenya. Over the decades, we have been basically living the bottom-up economy that you guys are driving. So steadily, every quarter, every month, adding more and more value to what started as basic crops. And so now, 42 years later, we employ 13,000 Kenyans. And we have moved effectively into manufacturing. So we are creating the bouquets. And so that is completely disintermediating and taking business away from other countries. So crops that used to go into bouquets and get assembled in UK and Europe are now being grown here on your farms in Naivasha and Mount Kenya. In your video, you said Kenya's greatest strength, you have many strengths, but Kenya's greatest strength are Kenyans, and we really believe that. So with every bit of value add that we're bringing onto the farms, and it brings complexity, it brings mind-boggling complexity. And so one of my favorite parts of getting to host visits, we've hosted CS Lee, we've hosted CS Kagwe, PS Abubakar, and my favorite parts is when you guys get to see your Kenyans and how smart our Kenyans are and how they're steadily introducing and dealing with the complexity that means that we compete on the world stage.
Yeah, thank you.
I think our recent transaction, only have two words: confidence in the country. I think EABL, history from Kenya since 1922, a truly Kenyan company. And our grandfathers, Diageo sold to another grandfather called Asahi from Japan at the 65% at the value of $2.3 billion. The currency is great for Kenya. This put the total enterprise value at $4.8 billion. So we are starting to get some currency, not shillings, but in dollars, which really means that we are truly into the world stage. And I think it gives us confidence as Kenyans, as Africans, because its employees are fully Kenyan, fully East African. Our consumers are from the region. Our suppliers are from the region. We always had the vision. We are now at 78% local content from flour, from farmers to any other supplier who comes into our ecosystem. So I think for an enterprise value of $4.8 billion that is totally integrated from grain to glass, as we call it, from farmer to consumption.
Okay.
Is very, very good. And I think it's an example of what we can do as Africans, what we can do as Kenyans. And if you think about the last 12 months, there's so many transactions that have been announced, and I'm sure there are very, very many more to come
being worked on,
of similar value, hopefully.
And I wanted to come back to you, James, on that point about how does a business like yours move up the value chain, or what value addition you have for clients as you go, and how does that help the sort of the Kenyan creating job creation? How does this work?
Well, thank you. Let me just frame the industry first. We're talking about an industry that's over $500 billion a year in global business services. This industry, you could say, is about half captive, which is shared services, corporations doing it for themselves and then sending it to various parties, and then the other half is made up by third parties, providers. We happen to do both. This business over 30 years has gone from labor arbitrage to how big can we get with scale to now capability. And this is why I'm very, very excited about Kenya, because it happens to be at the crossroads of where technology and capability can now balance, yes, we all need to bring more jobs for Kenya, but it's also about the value per job. We need to push that value per job higher. Yes, we need to continue to grow the base, but that value per job can be turbocharged with the technology capability of training new staff up at literally, I've seen 80, 90% faster than they've done in historic terms by leveraging technology. So why us and Kenya? We operate in 25 countries, so we basically have 25 choices. Kenya happens to be at the cusp of what we believe is the opportunity of people reviewing their sites around the world, and resiliency. Sorry, you stole my theme. Resiliency, resiliency. We're living in a time that adaptability, resiliency, durability, we're in a time where that value proposition wasn't priced properly in the past. And all of a sudden, we're in this process of repricing business models, because guess what? Where you get your power matters. Kenya is, as you highlighted, is outstandingly positioned, not just for sustainability, but it's the resiliency factor. And any businessman or businesswoman or shareholder is going to be looking at, how do you build a long-term partnership? That resiliency Kenya has built absolutely provides that framework, that base that people want to build their house on. And I will tell you that we started a little early. We started this vision 13 years ago. I would like to say we were probably a little early, but it's better to be early, and we have seen the growth, and the clients are now starting to see the growth. And sharing that, it's not just the African continent is expanding, but Kenya is really the diamond that is shining, and we all need to, thank you. I think we all need to carry that flag. And just a little bit of history, 30 years ago, the Philippines was doing about $200 million a year. 30 years later, they're doing about $34 billion in turnover in business processes. So the game afoot is to be had. And unfortunately, while we started there, they're entering a energy crisis because of the current situation. So one person's crisis is another person's opportunity. And we need to really be looking at how to position Kenya as that safe haven for how do we either start off as a second site and then establish that center for other corporations to put their shared services here. One last point I would like to make is developing second city strategy, being able to take not just what we do here in Nairobi, but intentionally have the government push this second city site out so that we can effectively not just bring impactful jobs, but bring this digital value proposition to the far reaches of the country. And because of the digital backbone, the M-Pesa that's mentioned, the platform is here. We just need to maybe connect on where the business side is going, the industry and government. Thank you.
Yeah,